Welcome to Parshas Beshalach. It should be before Shlema Mordechai and Sarah. There's a story with a boy that came from a poor family. So he decided to work at a neighboring home. And when it was time to be paid, the employer handed him some worn out coins. Seeing their tattered state, the boy refused to accept them, believing that they were worthless. But the employer assured him that despite their appearance, they still held their full value. But the boy insisted. In his eyes, they were not good enough, and he left without his wages. Wanting to resolve the matter, the employer approached the boy's father and explained what had happened. And so the father examined the coins that were offered and presented to the boy and confirmed that they were indeed of value. However, he told the employer, "You're obligated to pay my son, not me. Thus, you have to pay my son according to his understanding. You must give him coins that in his eyes hold value." The Dubna Magid uses this mashal to explain the Yetzias Mitzrayim. Hashem promised Avram Avinu that his descendants would leave B'rechush gadol, with great wealth. But what does true wealth mean? To Hashem it meant the eternal riches of Torah and mitzvos. However, Bnei Yisrael were not yet on a spiritual level to understand this spiritual wealth. And so in their eyes, B'rechush gadol could only mean gold and silver. Thus Hashem ensured that when Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim, they left B'rechush gadol with gold and silver and all that they took from the Mitzrayim. But Moshe Rabbeinu understood the deeper truth. For him, the real B'rechush gadol was the Torah and the mitzvos. This is why instead of Moshe Rabbeinu gathering gold and silver, we find that the Torah says that Moshe devoted himself to carrying the Atzmos Yosef, the bones of Yosef HaTzadik, which perhaps represents the inheritance of Klal Yisrael, which represents the Torah and the mitzvos. We see that Moshe was involved in the mitzvos while leaving Mitzrayim, and thus he left also with the Rechush Gadol, the Rechush of mitzvos and of Torah. The Torah describes Miriam going out with her tov, with her drums, and the other women followed her, also taking their tupim and mecholos, with their drums and dancing. And then Vatan lahem Miriam shiru laHashem kigol ga'ah. And Miriam led them in response. She answered them, "Sing to Hashem for his great victory." So Rav Moshe ben Chaviv, author of Yom Teruah and Get Pashut, cites his father-in-law, Rabbi Yonasan Galanti, to explain what does it mean, Vatan lahem Miriam? What was she answering? So he explains from the Gemara in Sukkah, which records a debate: is the essence of music found in instruments or in the human voice, in singing? So this question played out in the scene at the Yam Suf. Miriam picked up a musical instrument, and the women followed suit, assuming that the main expression of song was through instruments. But Miriam responded with the words, "Shiru laHashem," sing to Hashem, emphasizing that the true essence of song is in the human voice, the heartfelt expression of praise to Hashem. Moshe had requested from Pharaoh that Bnei Yisrael take a 3-day journey into the Midbar to offer karbanos to Hashem. Bnei Yisrael indeed traveled for 3 days, and on that 3rd day, Pharaoh and his army caught up to them at the Yam Suf. But where in the Torah do we see that they actually brought karbanos? Was this original request by Moshe merely a strategy to gain freedom, or was a real sacrifice indeed offered? So my uncle, Rav David Holzer, in a Sefer Yosef David on Thinking Aloud from the Rav on Shmos, suggests that the sacrifice was not physical, but spiritual. The korban offered was tefillah. As Rav Yosef Soloveitchik explains, that prayer is akin to a korban, as through tefillah, one offers oneself to Hashem in place of an animal. In fact, Targum Yonasan translates, the cry of Bnei Yisrael at the Yam Suf was a prayer, was a tefillah, and thus there was a korban during those 3 days, and it was the prayer that was offered by Bnei Yisrael at Yam Suf. My cousin Rav Aryeh Holzer provides a different perspective. The korban was the Mitzrayim, who were swallowed by the sea, who were drowned in the Krias Yam Suf. The Midrash states that both Bnei Yisrael and the Mitzrayim were sinners, and because of that, they both should have perished. However, Hashem accepted a substitute for Bnei Yisrael, the Mitzrayim, who died instead of Bnei Yisrael. Just like by korban, an animal is in some sense a substitute for us, the Mitzrayim were a substitute for Bnei Yisrael. This interpretation also sheds new light on the pasuk in Shmos, Perek Yud, pasuk Chaf Hey, where Moshe tells Pharaoh that even the Mitzrayim would provide karbanos for Bnei Yisrael, and in the end, they did through their very lives. When Amalek attacks Bnei Yisrael, the Torah specifies the location, Refidim. Why does the Torah emphasize this place? Rav David Feinstein explains that Refidim was where Bnei Yisrael questioned Hashem's presence. They were wavering in their faith. Amalek, our arch enemy, seizes precisely these moments of spiritual weakness to attack. They do not strike at random. They wait and sense our vulnerabilities and exploit them. That is why Amalek must be completely eradicated. They're an enemy that seeks us out during our lowest points to strike. However, there is an antidote to Amalek, Purim. Before the events of Purim, Bnei Yisrael were again also at a state of spiritual weakness, and Haman, a descendant of Amalek, saw this as an opportunity to destroy us. But unlike in Refidim, where doubt prevailed, Mordechai and Esther led a movement of tshuva, strengthening our commitment to Torah. Because of this, Haman met destruction instead of us. In fact, this connection between Amalek and Purim can be found in the place, in the gematria of Refidim. Refidim is 336, which is the same numerical value as Purim, also 336. The lesson is clear. When we fall spiritually, Amalek attacks. But when we rise through tshuva and renew our commitment to Torah, we defeat Amalek. This week's Parsha, Bnei Yisrael are traveling for 3 days and they couldn't find any water. The Midrash learns, Ein Mayim Ela Torah, that Mayim could be referring to Torah, and learns from this Parsha, from this pasuk, a drush, that a person should not go 3 days without learning Torah. And thus it was instituted that Mondays and Thursdays there should be Krias HaTorah. So Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, there we have during a 7-day week that there doesn't go 3 days without learning. Rav Asher Weiss, in his Minchas Asher, explores the fundamental question regarding Krias HaTorah. Is it a chovas yachid or a chovas tzibor? So the Ramban writes that Krias HaTorah is a chovas tzibor, a mitzvah on the community. As a result, in order for the Torah to be in order to read the Torah, one must have 10 present that have not fulfilled their obligation of Krias HaTorah. By contrast, Kriyas Megillah, Mikra Megillah, by Purim, is a Chovas Yachid. And thus, as long as there is one individual who has not read the Megillah, one could read the Megillah for that individual who has not yet fulfilled the mitzvah. However, others understand that Kriyas HaTorah is indeed a Chovas Yachid, an individual obligation. And the requirement for 10, for a minyan, is perhaps just due to the principle of Barov Am, Hadras Melech, that mitzvahs are enhanced when performed in a public setting. So the Brisker Rav, or Chaim Soloveitchik, brought in the Birkas Shmuel, raises a practical difference between these approaches. What happens if you have a minyan of 6 who have not davened and 4 who have davened? Right? Sometimes it's hard to make a minyan, and you bring in a few individuals who have already davened. So if Kriyas HaTorah is a Chovas Yachid, then as long as there are individuals in the minyan that have not fulfilled the obligation, that are still have a chiyuv to hear the Megillah, then one can lane the Kriyas HaTorah. However, if it's Chovas Tzibor, then at least all 10 of the minyan need to be mechuyev in the reading, have to be individuals who have not heard the Torah reading yet in order for it to be read. The debate also impacts a question of, can one learn Torah or read other things during Kriyas HaTorah? So if Kriyas HaTorah is a Chovas Tzibor, then one might argue that an individual does not necessarily need to listen. As long as the Tzibor as a whole hears the reading, the Torah reading, that's sufficient. And in fact, this Shibbolei Haleket entertains the idea that one can learn quietly during Kriyas HaTorah. However, if Kriyas HaTorah is a Chovas Yachid, then each individual must hear and listen attentively, making it prohibited to learn during the reading because one has an obligation himself personally to hear the Torah reading. Have a good Shabbos.